Hello everyone, welcome back to Real Life. I hope you're having a wonderful day. If you enjoy these vintage episodes, hit the like button. That helps promote them to like-minded viewers like yourself. Subscribe and you'll be notified of new episodes. Members get early previews 1 to 2 weeks in advance. There's something new and different every weekend. This episode is a contemporary piece I shot in 2011 as a freelance news story on a prescribed burn in the Rockies. The footage is rather dramatic, as I was embedded with the fire crew on the slopes of Mount Buller as they supervised the work. Mount Buller is located in the Spray Valley west of Calgary and south of Canmore. The valley is well known to Calgarians for its backcountry hiking and climbing, offering views of Spray Lakes and the surrounding peaks along the Alberta-BC border. Forest fires. Nothing is more terrifying in heavily forested regions of Western Canada than a wildfire racing through tinder-dry conditions. But that's precisely what happens every year intentionally in very specific parts of the country, and for good reasons.
There's a lot of misconceptions about wildfire on the landscape. A lot of people feel that fire suppression has created much older and older forests. The truth is historically there was a lot of fire put on the landscape by the Aboriginal people. And with the arrival of Europeans, different culture, we stopped putting fire on the landscape. And what we're trying to do today with our prescribed fires is select key locations where it's very critical for a number of objectives: wildlife, certainly habitat, mountain vine beetle, large landscape fire breaks. And if we can select those locations to get in on the ground on those, then at least we've got a starting chance of putting fire back in the landscape and stopping larger fires in the future.
Over several days in late August, under a warm summer sun, Alberta's Sustainable Resource staff and helicopter crews worked in the Mount Buller region of Kananaskis country to reintroduce the natural benefits of wildfire to the overgrown and aging forest.
Today we're working on the Mount Buller prescribed burn after several days of setting up and burning out guards and securing and stabilizing it, and today we've got optimal conditions for fire.
Great. And what is optimal conditions?
What we look at is build-up index or an increased drought. We've got to have a number of days since rain so that the fuels on the ground dry out. The higher the BUI or build-up index, the better off we are to a point. Otherwise, we start to burn too much of the soil and organics. So today the BUI is about 70, which is getting up high, but it's certainly not extreme yet. The higher the BUI and the hotter the temperatures, of course, and the hotter the fire will burn, but it will at some point start doing a lot of damage to the soils. We want high-intensity fire, but low severity effects, which really means lots of crowning and mortality in amongst the stand. At the same time, at soil level or ground level, not much consumption. And right now we're getting that.
Tell me about, explain fire severity, please.
What we're looking at is the actual severity or impacts long-term of the fire. So it takes a long time for forest soils to build, and a high severity fire with high intensity would consume all of the organics and leave it right back down to base parent soil material. We don't want that. We want to maintain the forest productivity, the water holding capacities of it, the seed sources and root systems intact. So we want high intensity fire which kills the crowns, but low severity impact so it doesn't consume all the organics. And we do that by carefully monitoring our indices, our test burns, and monitoring pre and post burn of how much consumption we actually get.
So now getting to the fire itself, how do you set a fire?
Okay, we use two different tools for ignition: ground ignition with hand crews, as well as aerial ignition.
Highly experienced longtime wildfire prevention officer Rick Arthur oversaw the challenging demands with his fire crew on the ground and in the air.
The helitorch is basically a tank of gelled fuel with a pump and igniter attached to it. The pilot can control ignition by just pressing a button and dropping the fuel and igniting it at the same time. The reason the fuel is gelled is so it doesn't flash off and it falls in kind of a sticky, gobby matter and hits the ground and burns for a longer period. It also lands on trees and other vegetation, so it has a chance to start igniting. When they are igniting, they're very careful in selecting their targets, trying to find and look down at the ground for the more flammable fuels, because different fuels respond differently. and that way they're able to get better ignition.
The end result being?
The end result being, if the relative humidity, temperature, winds, solar radiation are all good, we should get high intensity fire with low fire severity effects.
And next year, what will this forest look like?
It'll start to green up right away. What we'll see is with fire we get a release of nutrients and ash. That acts like fertilizer. It helps to green up things. Once the stand opens up a little bit, it becomes more exposed to the sun. With the black, it creates a high albedo, so it warms the soils and they respond quicker. All the seed that's there will start to sprout. The root systems that are normally suppressed by shade are suddenly exposed, and they start to sprout up, and we get a very diverse amount of vegetation coming up and creates tremendous habitat for a variety of species.
This sounds like this is the goal.
That's part of it, yep. We've got several goals on this burn. The Mount Buller prescribed burn has been in planning for several years in conjunction with biologists, the watershed staff, our fire staff, mountain pine beetle staff, all looking at different objectives. And this location was chosen because we're going to get the most number of objectives in one area. So it's very positive for mountain pine beetle because this has been an area that's been hit constantly. It's positive from a mountain sheep habitat perspective because the mountain sheep habitat has been getting heavily grown over, and even the trees are moving upslope quite a bit. So a lot of that subalpine environment that they normally browse on has been lost, and this will help open it up. From a fire perspective, we're going to create a valley-wide break here that'll help us to stop large-scale fires, wildfires sometime in the future. It's all positive.
Thank you to all my Patreon supporters, members, donors, and subscribers. It's a pleasure producing these fascinating little episodes. If you want to see more of these old reels restored and preserved, consider supporting by hitting the thanks button or becoming a monthly member. Your support will help preserve these old reels. Have a great day, be kind, and we'll see you again next time on Real Life.